Good. We are recording.
Okay. All right. So I actually see some familiar faces, so that's
Yeah,
nice.
some of them were at the
I know
conference
I see
actually.
Danielle and then of course Monica. I work with Monica on the board. Hi. All right. Well, do you want me to go ahead and start introducing myself, David?
Yeah, let's do it. And
Okay.
I'll kind of monitor the chat
Okay.
and I'll send a message out to some folks that are in the wrong Zoom room.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, first off, thank you for having me, everyone, and joining, on a Thursday evening and being excited to learn more about herbs. Although I'm sure from what David was telling me, many of you already have a pretty strong background in herbalism. But just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm Dr. Rachel Knowles. I'm a doctor of clinical nutrition. So my background is heavily in the nutrition side of things. But I came to herbalism actually as I was going through my nutrition supervised training. I kept running into clients that could have really used herbal support, but I didn't feel confident in recommending herbs. I knew way more about vitamins and minerals than I did about the power and the mechanisms of action that herbs have to offer as well. And I kind of brushed it off to the side and pushed off diving into some herbal training for a while until the pandemic hit. So I don't know if you all remember this or if this was the case for you, but for me, I have a full script account. And when that lockdown happened, I think we all observed that the over-the-counter medications flew off the shelf. Next thing to go was all the immune supporting nutraceuticals. And I was frustrated because on full script, all that was really left was immune supporting herbal formulations. And I just didn't feel confident or comfortable recommending those products, especially when I was thinking about drug herb nutrient and nutrient interactions. So that's what really drove me to study herbalism, get more comfortable with it so that it could be another tool in my clinical toolbox, and so that I could also offer this as an additional level of support and, in my opinion, medical freedom to my clients. So, with that being said, I ended up starting an herbal education company called Herbal Wellness Collective. And I started putting together mini courses on individual herbs. And I thought that was the way to go for a while until I realized that it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. So I took a pause and mapped my courses so that we could learn how to use herbs in multiple ways rather than learning 200 herbs, learn how to use one herb 20 different ways. Because I think that having that practical knowledge is so beneficial when you're seeing clients. So, tonight, I'm going to be sharing herbalism and modern healthcare, bridging tradition and science for whole person wellness. And this may be, old news to you if you've had plenty of herbal training, but I hope that you can take something from this presentation. And I'm very excited to share herbalism with you if you are new to introducing this into your practice as well. So let's start with what herbalism actually is. I think that when we think of herbs and we're practicing in a nutrition setting, we often are thinking about capsules, teas, maybe some powders that we can just recommend. But they're often formulated together. And do we truly know what the mechanisms of action are for each of those herbs that are formulated in that product and how they're interacting with other nutrients and pharmaceutical medications that our clients may be taking? So, aside from herbs being used as medicine, they're also therapeutic. We can use herbs in aromatherapy. It's also therapeutic to oversee an herbal garden. I spend a lot of time in my herbal garden, and I consider that daily therapy. And it's also used for wellness purposes. It's one of the oldest forms of healthcare, although I know social media lately has been making herbalism seem like it was just discovered, but herbalism has been around for thousands of years. And what I really love about herbalism is how we have blended that ancient wisdom that's been passed down from one generation to the next, and we've blended it with modern scientific research. So now we can put doses to specific herbs. We can explain the why and the how when herbs are working for us biochemically in the body. And herbalism is still practiced worldwide. And I think here in the US, we got a little bit away from herbalism for a while. And it's so cool to see, especially on social media, us coming back to having an interest in the holistic healing that herbalism offers. But herbalism ranges from home-based remedies. Some of us have home apothecaries that we're using just for our friends and family. And there are those of us who are incorporating herbalism into our clinical applications. So maybe we are making specific herbal recommendations in our nutrition protocols. But herbalism goes beyond just recommending plants based on, what Google says the benefits are. It's about understanding the plant properties, so the bioactive compounds or the plant constituents, what their interactions are with the body, so their herbal actions, and their role in overall healthcare. So how can we apply this to a client-specific complaint or maybe a disease that they're presenting with? So, what are the benefits of herbal medicine? Well, just like nutrition and other modalities of alternative therapies, it's personalized and it's holistic. So, it focuses on the whole person rather than just isolated symptoms. That being said, often herbal products or preparations can address symptoms acutely while also addressing the underlying root imbalances. It's beneficial for supporting chronic conditions because most herbs are so gentle. We can use them long term. We can take larger quantities depending on the type of herb. And it's commonly used for complaints related to digestive health, inflammation, immune function, and so much more. So, essentially, anything that somebody would be coming to you for nutrition recommendations, you can weave some herbs in there as well. And I think we often forget how nutrient dense herbs are. They are rich in nutrients and they offer functionality to them. Many of these herbs contain essential vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. And if you have ever cooked with herbs, which I would hope so, because that would be some pretty bland food otherwise, you're already practicing culinary herbalism, whether you realize it or not. It may not be to the effect of using specific herbs to elicit a desired effect in the body, but your body still recognizes the taste of the herb, the aroma, and it's interacting with your biochemistry, whether you realize it or not. And I think we think of herbs as enhancing food, but another perspective is to look at food as the carrier for herbs. So the carrier of these almost like little nutraceuticals into our body. And there's actually a really interesting talk at HealCon a couple weeks ago, and I know some of you on this call attended this session where we're talking about herbs and how we miss out on the flavor profile and the flavor benefits when we're taking herbs just in capsule form. And if that's you, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I know some herbs are not exactly palatable, but cooking with herbs also gives us a comprehensive experience and relationship with that herb. But another benefit of herbal medicine is that it's sustainable as long as we are practicing herbalism respectfully, especially with wild crafting, and we're being mindful of herbs that are at risk of becoming endangered. But herbalism is also highly accessible. Even going back to the example of the medications and vitamins and minerals flying off the shelf during the pandemic, the herbs were still kind of just hanging out there. Um, But what's so cool about herbs, and especially now that we have like these hydroponic planters that we can just throw on our kitchen counter, is you can grow herbs anywhere. You can grow it in an apartment, in a small yard, in a windowsill. Herbs are pretty resilient, and I think that speaks to a lot of the effects that they have on our body. So, I'm sure many of you are familiar with these forms of herbal medicine, but I just want to put this out there so you can see just how many different forms you can have in your clinical toolkit. So, aside from cooking with herbs, teas are a great way to start. We're using teas for the softer parts of plants, like leaves and flowers. It extracts the water soluble compounds. An example of this is chamomile tea for relaxation. What I love about chamomile is that it doesn't have the drowsiness side effect that a lot of um, anxiolytics and sleep inducing medications can have. So you can actually drink chamomile all throughout the day. It's not just a nighttime tea. It may be if you're highly sensitive to chamomile, but generally it's not going to cause you to feel too sleepy or disrupt your focus or anything of that nature. Decoctions are used to boil the tougher parts of plants, so bark, root, and it's for a stronger extraction. An example of this is a ginger decoction for digestion. So often we see like ginger tea, but if we want to extract more of the gingerols and shogiols, we can actually do a ginger decoction. Tinctures, I'm sure you've worked with these before, and maybe you've even experimented with making your own. But with tinctures, we're using things like alcohol or glycerin to extract the plant compounds. A common one, especially during cold and flu season, is that echinacea tincture for immune support. And I finally find it highly beneficial to start taking that tincture at the first sign of getting a sniffle or just feeling generally off. And what's really nice about tinctures as well is, aside from them being more potent than a tea, is that for kids who would benefit from a specific herb safe for children, maybe if they're not going to sit down and drink an entire cup of tea, we can do a dropper of tincture and it'll be done and over with. It's like that Mary Poppins saying, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down or something like that. So just a quick dropper and we can continue with our day. So the one that I was most familiar with when I was going through my nutrition training was capsules and powders. That when I would recommend herbs was what I was finding on full script was capsules. Capsules are fantastic, especially for herbs that are a little bit less palatable and they're quick and easy. But going back to that example of when we're taking a capsule, we don't always get the benefit of experiencing the flavor of the herb. But capsules and powders are a fantastic form of herbal medicine as long as it is not cut with anything else and it's coming from a reputable supplier. But in capsules, we're using the dried herbs in powder form, and then it's encapsulated or loose form as the powders. So, great one, turmeric capsules for inflammation. Turmeric is probably one of my favorite herbs for systemic inflammation, and it's easy to cook with as well. So, capsule or cooking, it's easy to get your turmeric in. With topical applications, if you're using natural personal care products, you've likely already been using products that contain herbs like calendula or even lemon balm. We can use herbal salves, oils, and compresses topically, and this is highly beneficial for our skin health, especially if we have a wound that's healing. And then essential oils and aromatherapy. Um, we can use the concentrated compounds and put it into a topical application as long as it's diluted, or if you have a diffuser, you've definitely inhaled some essential oils and practice aromatherapy. Lavender is one of my all-time favorites. So, why is herbalism still relevant today? Well, 80% of the world still relies on herbal medicine as its primary form of healthcare. And I think that's a staggering number to think about, especially if we're kind of in our own little bubble here in the US. But, we are one of the top consumers, if not the top consumer of pharmaceutical medications in the world. So it doesn't surprise me that herbalism isn't necessarily the primary form of healthcare here in the US, but there's a growing interest. And I'm noticing this especially with younger generations as they are. Having greater access to health information, and they're seeing the status quo being challenged, especially in the healthcare model of here's a problem, take a pill. People are wanting more holistic and gentle approaches to managing their health rather than taking a pill to take a pill to take a pill to cover up the symptoms and side effects that the medications sometimes themselves are causing. But fortunately, a lot of integrative medicine and functional medicine practitioners are now starting to include herbal remedies alongside conventional treatments. And I think that this can take medicine actually pretty far because there's so many herbs that actually enhance the efficacy of pharmaceutical medications. And when it comes to taking a prescription, the ultimate goal is one, to be on the fewest number of prescriptions possible, but also to be on the lowest dose because that decreases our risk of experiencing side effects. And herbs can help take the efficacy of that drug further so that you can be on a lower dose of that drug if you must be on it. And as I was saying, there's that growing interest in holistic wellness. So the natural plant-based alternatives are becoming highly sought after. And I think it's just a tradition that individuals are interested in exploring, even as a hobby. So this isn't just about optimizing health. This is about being self-sufficient and being able to sustain the health of ourselves or those in our household. So herbalism, as I said, it's thousands of years old. It predates written language and it was used by ancient Egyptians. We see there's been preserved mummies that have had calendula in their teeth. There's that's been used by ancient Greece, traditional Chinese medicine, and indigenous peoples. And what's really cool is learning about the history of how herbalism has spread globally and how each culture has utilized herbs in a slightly different way based on, their worldview, their perspective, their systems of healing that are aligned with their culture. But ultimately, we've all shared this knowledge with one another, which is really great because if we were just relying on one type of herbal medicine, like for example, here, Western herbal medicine, often Western herbal medicine is thought of using herbs just for one specific bioactive compound or just using one herb for a condition rather than formulating and viewing the plant holistically in itself and all the bioactive compounds it has to offer and what those mechanisms of action would be on the body. But aside from being used nutritionally and medicinally, herbs were also used in ceremonies. They were used to ward off evil spirits for protection. They were grown in monastery gardens. And ultimately, all of this knowledge has been passed orally down through generations. Now we have the Materia Medicas, we have the plant monographs, thanks to some of the great herbalists of our time. But I think a great example of how herbalism has been passed down from one generation to the next, and how that's actually been life changing even for today's generations, is this. So I live here in North Carolina. I live very close to Asheville, where the hurricane caused substantial damage to that area. And while so many resources were needed immediately. It was so cool to see locals who were so self-sufficient on their own. They already were fully immersed in folk herbalism. They knew how to use the plants around them. They knew the nutrient value of the plants around them. And I just think that speaks volumes about the value that herbalism has. But every culture has its own plant traditions, and this demonstrates universal human reliance on herbal remedies. And I want to say that, it's okay to borrow herbal traditions as long as we're practicing cultural respect. We're honoring the traditions. We're not brushing this off or trying to present this as something that we've discovered or something new. I really encourage you, if you're trying out a new herbal formulation or a new herb, to learn about its history and spend time with ancestors in that way, learning how they came to know the plant and all of the trial and error that went into finding how that plant was useful for human health. So, just to briefly compare herbalism with modern medicine, herbalism, of course, is holistic and it supports our body physically and mentally. It promotes resilience and balance. Modern medicine tends to focus on disease management and isolated symptom relief. And as I was saying, herbalism can focus on isolated symptom relief as well, but it also supports that underlying root cause imbalance. So, perfect examples of this is licorice for mucosal repair, in addition to the proton pump inhibitor therapy. And perhaps the ultimate goal is to come off that PPI. Same thing with rhodiola to support energy while slowly tapering stimulants. So it's not about just piling on herb after herb after herb, kind of like we see clients doing with supplements sometimes where you have like 15 different supplements. It's about using herbs that are going to serve you in your current stage of life and hopefully coming off of medications if that's a goal or desire of yours so that you can live a more holistic life. So, herbalism excels in many areas of practice. Inflammation, we utilize herbs like turmeric, ginger, boswellia as daily modulators of inflammation. For gut health, you're likely already using these with your client, but bitters to stimulate digestion or demulcents to soothe our mucosa. For stress, we can use adaptogens and nervines to improve mood and resilience. For immune health, immunomodulators like reishi and astragalus can enhance immune balance, especially important for autoimmune conditions where we're not trying to suppress or activate the immune system, we're trying to strike a balance. And metabolic health, like cinnamon and berberine for glycemic control. So let's walk through just a few snapshots. So, for inflammation, turmeric, the bioactive compound, is curcumin, and this inhibits our nuclear factor kappa B and COX-2 pathways. So, it downregulates pro inflammatory cytokines like interleukin 1 beta, interleukin 6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Clinically, it's effective in reducing symptoms for osteoarthritis, IBD, and metabolic syndrome. Boswellia contains the bioactive compound boswellic acids, and this inhibits 5-lipoxygenase or 5-LOX. It reduces leukotriene production. So again, this is wonderful for arthritis, asthma, and inflammatory bowel conditions. I think my favorite herbs are those that address stress and mood. Ashwagandha is one of my all-time favorite herbs, but this is a great example why it's beneficial to have various preparations of ashwagandha, not just for delivery method, but also because of its palatability. Ashwagandha tends to smell like horse urine, in my opinion. It's like called the horse herb, but the bioactive compound is the withanolides, and these modulate our HPA axis. It lowers our serum cortisol and improves GABAergic signaling. So it's highly beneficial for anxiety, enhancing sleep, and improving cognition and stress resilience. This is one of those gentle herbs that I have seen so many people come off of their SSRIs and they're able to manage their anxiety with ashwagandha. It was actually one of the first herbs that I started taking medicinally a long time ago. And I recommend it quite often for individuals who are neurodivergent and experience anxiety and overstimulation quite often. Rhodiola, the bioactive compound, include the rosavins and the salidoricides, and the mechanism supports mitochondrial ATP production. It modulates serotonin and dopamine. So again, this is great for addressing mental fatigue, burnout, and mild depression. In terms of digestive health, ginger, which I'm sure we all include in our cooking at some point or another, but ginger contains gingerols and the shogules, and this stimulates gastric motility. It reduces nausea by antagonizing serotonin receptors in the gut. So it's wonderful for nausea, especially morning sickness, bloating, dyspepsia, and sluggish digestion. I also found that ginger was really great for getting people back on track who experienced like long COVID symptoms and had slowed down gut motility. Fennel is another one of those herbs that I use often, especially with the little babies. The bioactive compounds include anethol and fenchone. It's antispasmodic and carminative, so it reduces intestinal smooth muscle contractions. It's commonly used for IBS. The way that I use it most frequently in my practice is actually for infant colic. You've probably seen it as the active ingredient in the product gripe water in the baby section, and is great for post-meal bloating or cramping as well. Licorice or DGL, which is glycerinated licorice, which is better for long-term use, contains glycyrrhizin, and it's great for enhancing mucin production. It can promote mucosal repair and reduce inflammation. So this makes licorice beneficial for conditions like GERD, gastric ulcers, and leaky gut syndrome. And our last snapshot for immune support, elderberry. If you were at the conference at HealCon a week or two ago, there was an incredible elderberry company there. I think it was called Camelberry. And it was really cool because instead of making their elderberry syrup from dried elderberries and then rehydrating them, they used fresh elderberries. So it was actually a little bit thinner than elderberry syrup that I've had before, and it tasted really good. But the active compounds here are the anthocyanins and the flavonoids, which can help inhibit viral replication and stimulate cytokine production, including IL-6, TNF alpha, and IL-1 beta in moderation. It's effective in early treatment of cold and flu symptoms, especially within the 48 hours of onset. And it's so rich in vitamin C. Elderberry is one of the first things that I pull out of my apothecary cabinet when anybody in my household starts to feel unwell. Echinacea contains alkamides and caffeic acid derivatives. So it activates our macrophages and natural killer cells. It enhances phagocytosis and interferon response. I'm just going to pause just for a moment. I think there was a comment here.
Oh, it was just for me, Rachel.
Oh, okay.
I know the HealCon, was it you that told me someone was presenting on soil health there?
Yes, Tim Whiteman.
Yeah, I just put a study in the chat, guys. It's an interesting one where they looked at a bunch of different echinacea samples side by side. Each of them had different soil. They were each grown in different soil. Each of
Mhm.
the soil samples had different levels of organic matter, and they were studying were there differences in the macrophage activity based on the quality of the soil. And it's an interesting read. Yeah.
Ooh, thank you for sharing. I'll definitely be copying and pasting that for later.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But echinacea can be used for that acute upper respiratory tract infection support and immune stimulation during the early stages of illness. And lastly, reishi has the beta glucans and the triterpenoids. So this helps modulate our immune system by stimulating macrophages, dendritic cells, and T lymphocytes. So it's beneficial for chronic immune deficiency, allergies, and there's emerging research that's showing that it could be used as an adjunctive cancer support therapy. But of course, it's not a magic pill. It's not something to take the place of any type of medical treatments. So just keep that in mind. But it's not enough to just know the bioactive compounds of an herb and its mechanism of action and its application. We also need to understand the framework of energetics and constitution. So plants are categorized by temperature, moisture, and tone. So they're hot or cold, dry or moist, tense or lax. Examples of this: peppermint is cooling and drying, whereas licorice is moistening, sweet, and harmonizing. So what we have to do is we have to actually match the energetics of the herb to an individual's constitution. So think of yourself. Are you a person who typically runs more hot or cold? If you're a person who runs hot, you're probably not going to want to be adding a lot of cayenne to your daily life. You're going to want something more cooling. If you're somebody who is a little bit tense and maybe feels overstimulated, you're probably not going to want to rely on something like Asian ginseng. We're going to want herbs that are going to bring us back down into balance, some that act on our GABAergic system to bring harmony to our nervous system. And another thing that just adds to the puzzle here is that people usually have mixed constitutions. So you really have to look at the over what am I trying to say? The overall view of a formulation you're putting together, the energetics of the individual plants, what their specific mechanisms of action are on the body, and how that matches up against somebody's constitution. Because we're not trying to sway someone one way or the other. We're trying to find that harmonious balance. So let's briefly talk about the scope of herbalism. So right now, there isn't a license to practice herbalism, and I hope it stays that way because this is one of the most natural forms of healing, and everybody should have access to it, and everybody should be able to share their knowledge and wisdom about herbs because everybody has their own unique experience and education. But herbs can be used for preventative care because they tend to be so gentle and most are safe for long-term use. So it can help support wellness and prevent illness. But if you do have specific conditions or symptoms, it can help with symptom management. So some herbal remedies are fast acting, while some take several weeks to start reaping the benefits of. And we can use these herbs in combination. So we have the immediate relief as well as addressing that underlying imbalance. It's holistic. So our body naturally interacts with herbs. It's the most natural thing on the planet. However, if you are foraging for herbs, make sure that you know how to properly identify herbs because there are so many within plant families that look similar to one another, and one can be safe and wonderful, and the other one could be very toxic. With culinary herbalism, we can incorporate herbs into our food and beverages for flavor and medicinal benefits. And I'm going to challenge you if you aren't already doing this. Pay attention to the types of herbs that you are drawn to cooking with. Look into the benefits of that herb and see, is this something that your body is craving that's trying to communicate to you? I need more of this because I'm feeling imbalanced in this area. And with topical and external use, we can use herbs in salves, compresses, and skincare. You can even take some tea infusions and add them into baths for soaking, especially with some of our relaxing herbs, and it's a wonderful way to close out your day. So, if you're new to integrating herbs into your nutrition practice, here's what I recommend. Start with food like herbs. So, herbs that are most commonly included in your cooking. From there, you can take the next step up and start playing around with teas. You can purchase pre-made teas, and then you can start actually blending your own teas together when you get more comfortable. And really take note, which is down towards the bottom of the slide, but document and monitor how you feel, the effects of that specific formulation. Because when you're formulating herbs for yourself, it takes a little bit of tweaking, and that's almost the fun of it. We kind of feel like a witch, or like we're making potions. I feel like you're in a Professor Snape's class from Harry Potter. But it's a really fun process. And I know it can be intimidating to start making your own herbal medicine if you haven't done so, but you have to start somewhere. And it's okay to make mistakes. And it's best to get that practice for yourself before you start venturing out into making those formula recommendations for your clients. And you can always purchase pre-made formulated products. Like I really like Herb Farm and Gaia Herbs. And if you have a full script account, both of those brands are on there. So after incorporating some of these food-like herbs, the next step I recommend is really start to pay attention to the energetics of the herb and what they do in terms of changing one's constitution. So warming herbs for cold clients, moistening herbs for individuals who have drier systems. So you can actually layer herbs into your existing nutrition plans. For example, bitters before meals for sluggish digestion. You can add adaptogens in with a breakfast smoothie, and nervines. One of the easiest ways to get in nervines is in evening teas or like bedtime ritual. Now, although herbs are generally considered safe, there are still some challenges and considerations because herbs are powerful. So, we do need to be mindful of herb drug interactions. Some of these herbs interact with medications, and probably one that you've heard of is St. John's wort interacting with antidepressants. St. John's wort also tends to reduce the efficacy of pharmaceutical medications. So that's why often you see St. John's wort listed as a severe contraindication for a lot of the common medications that people take today. Another challenge, and this kind of ties into the study that David shared, is quality and standardization. So, herbal supplements and products can vary widely in quality and potency, especially if you are making these yourself. So, it requires careful sourcing if you're buying like the raw ingredients or the dried ingredients, or if you are looking for pre-made products, really research the company. There are so many herbal products, especially like elderberry, where there's hardly any elderberry. It makes me think of like almond milk, where I think a study revealed that there's like 3 almonds per quart of almond milk. We don't want that with our herbs. We want our herbs to be potent and the dosing to be consistent, especially in capsules and tinctures. And what David was saying with the soil and seeing if that influenced the effects of, I think it was echinacea, that's a whole nether world. I've been digging into the soil science here recently, not just for herbs, but just to understand better the lack of nutrients in our whole foods today. And I think that that's an area of herbalism that is going to explode in terms of research here very soon. There's also challenges with misinformation and overuse. So, a primary one is companies making very drastic claims about their products, like herbs are going to cure X, Y, and Z. We want to steer clear of items like that. Herbs are not meant to take the place of medications, but rather to bring harmony to the systems in our body so that we can support natural healing. But the future of herbal medicine is very bright. There continues to be an increased interest in scientific research to validate these traditional herbal practices. I'm sure if you look up herbs today, you'll see that many of these studies are coming from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And sometimes, depending on the herb, it can be very hard to find recent studies. With within even the past 10 years, and even harder to find studies, trials that have been conducted using human participants. A lot of them use fish, like carp, mice, rats, all of that fun stuff. But I encourage you to dig into, if you're interested in research and interested in getting published, dig into the research and really look at the bioactive compound, the mechanism of action, and how that could actually be beneficial for a variety of disease states. I just recently presented at HuelCon my findings on, for example, lion's mane. I know it's a medicinal fungi, but some people include that in herbs. But lion's mane has been heavily studied for its protective benefits for Alzheimer's disease. And I was curious if the effects it had on cognition could be beneficial for individuals who are on the autism spectrum or who have ADHD. And to do that, I really had to dig into those bioactive compounds and look at the mechanisms of action. And that's what we have to do sometimes if there's limited research on an herb. But you can change that. If there's an herb you're interested in, start digging in the literature. There's also advancements in herbal pharmacology. So herbal pharmacology used to be required in pharmacology programs. That went away for quite a while, I want to say over 10 years, and it's slowly making its way back because so many people are taking herbal products. So pharmacists need to be aware of the drug herb interactions so that they can properly educate and keep consumers safe. And as the demand for natural and sustainable health solutions grow, herbal medicine still remains a vital tool for wellness and disease management. So, this isn't about using herbs in place of your vitamin and mineral supplements, but rather as another tool to help fill the gaps in our nutrient needs, to help bring balances back without the use of harsh pharmaceuticals whenever possible. So, to just bring this all together, herbalism is time tested. We're all here alive and well today because our ancestors figured it out to some degree. They were able to survive and address health conditions as they came up, and they shared that ancient wisdom from one generation to the next. We now have some research on herbalism that further validates the efficacy of some of the more common herbs in human health, and that increased interest, especially in the younger generations coming up, and that thirst for truly holistic and natural wellness is just going to further increase the demand for herbal knowledge. So, with that being said, I'm just briefly going to go over one of my program offerings and then I will open it up for questions. So, at Herbal Wellness Collective, we have a beginner herbalism program. It's Foundations in Herbal Medicine. It's a 250-hour self-paced training program and it has been revamped. It's designed for aspiring herbalists and wellness professionals. It combines the traditional knowledge with science and then also that hands-on experience. It's aligned with the American Herbalist Guild's core educational guidelines. So if you are planning on eventually becoming a registered herbalist, this program would count for 250 hours of the educational piece. The program is comprehensive. It covers many areas: herbal energetics, their actions, materia medica, foundational herbs and their monographs, preparation methods, herbal actions, the synergy between nutrition and herbs, how to garden if you are interested in that, as well as ethics, practical skills, herbal career path options and business building tools, and evidence-based applications. So the modules are released quarterly, two at a time, so that you have an enriched experience. It is a lot of information. Um, For holistic consulting members, you get $100 off. So it's $650 instead of $750. You have lifetime access to all course updates, interactive activities, quizzes, and community access. You get a certificate of completion, and you will end up with a final herbal protocol project. There's also payment plans that offer financial flexibility. And David is going to have this information to send out afterwards as well. But there's a coupon code, Holistic Consulting 100, and the link right here. Have my references there, and I'm sure David's going to share these slides with you. So at this time, I will stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Rachel. That was awesome. I'll kick it off with the first question as everybody kind of pulls their thoughts together. I'm curious, what are the brands of teas, loose leaf, first bag, or both that you typically use with clients? Do you have like a couple really good quality companies?
Yeah, I mean, Gaia is my go-to. Gaia is here in North Carolina. I know the people over there, so I feel most comfortable with their products. But really, any of the lines on like Full Script are going to be high quality. Somebody said traditional medicinals. That's another great one.
Yeah.
And also, I encourage you to see if there are local apothecaries in your area. Of course, ask questions about the sourcing. Just to ensure that you are getting a quality product. But that's a great way to, get to know your local herbalists as well. There's also Mountain Rose Herbs. They also sell bags of dried loose leaf tea so that you can make your own. So there's so many great options out there.
Does Gaia do loose leaf teas or is it bagged?
It's bagged, not loose leaf. I
Uh,
don't think they have loose leaves. I've always used the bagged.
yeah, no, that's what I thought too. Okay, I was just making sure. Cool.
Yeah. And as far as like if you are planning on purchasing, you have to check the sourcing and the sourcing can change. But like
Yeah.
I like Star West Botanicals as well for like my big bags. Let me see if I can grab one here. Like you can get it all different ways. Oh, it's blurring
Mm.
out. But like dandelion leaf, you can get it like cut and sifted. If you're getting cinnamon sticks, you can get them cut at different lengths, depending on what you want to do. You can get powders. I think you can even create your own blends and have them put it together. I'm sure there's like a minimum order for that. Um, but they also have their own blends. Like they have like a women's health blend, winter blend, things of that nature.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, what other questions you guys got?
I have a question. First, Rachel, it was good to meet you at HealCon.
Yes, it was great meeting you.
I like what you said about to know how the plant was used traditionally. That's going back to the root, if you will.
Mhm.
It helps to carry the message that the whole plant is important, not just these isolated compounds that we're using in our pharmaceuticals sometimes.
Yes.
But also, I wanted to ask, what did you think about ACHS's American College of Herbal Sciences? They're giving out essential oils for culinary uses.
Yeah, so that is something that I noticed as well, because that came in our bag, right? And I don't have experience using essential oils for culinary purposes, so I can't say that I have a collected thought on that one way or another. But I'd be curious because they have that culinary program now, right, at the school.
I believe so. It might be Bowman that you're thinking of, but
Oh, it might be Bowman. Yeah. Um, but I noticed that right away. And because at first I thought it was a little bottle of like loose leaf. What was the herb? Was it echinacea?
it was basil.
Basil, that's what it was. And when I realized that was an oil, I was like, oh. But yeah, I don't know enough about cooking with essential oils to give you a straightforward answer on that.
That's gonna be a strong basil flavor.
Well, yes, it would have to be, I mean, substantially diluted. Yeah. Oh, someone was saying, let's see, is it Sierra? Yes, I love basil. I'm growing African basil now in my garden. Sierra, have you used basil essential oil for cooking? Has anybody? I'm just curious.
No, I haven't. I love basil, but I have not.
Yeah,
Rachel, this is Lisa. We did use them in culinary school. We didn't use a lot of them, but we only used them to finish a dish. Just like a
interesting.
slight drizzle for, kind of like a little oomph at the end. But we didn't do play around with a lot of it, but I do remember using some oils for that. Now, whether they were essential oils, that's a good question. Like, what's the
Interesting.
difference between that and, another type of oil?
Well, so because you can make like infused oils. So
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, I'm not saying that it wasn't essential oils, but I wonder if it was just like a stronger infused, like an extra virgin olive oil. Sierra was saying I've only used infused oils, not essential oils. Yeah. So, and that's
What would you
another
use
fun.
for an essential oil then as a carrier?
What could you use?
What's normally used for that?
So you can use like there's jojoba. I don't use essential oils like as much as I use herbs for like clinical applications internally. But there's a few different carriers that you can use. Um, I know, let's see, let's find out together because there's so many different options. So you can use the vegetable based ones. There's jojoba. Um, almond oil is another one that you can use to dilute it. Um, grapeseed. Yeah. So those are some of the oils that you could use for essential oil. But like if you're trying to do an infused oil that's really going to bring out the flavor of the herb itself, like for cooking in the way that you were talking, like to give it a little oomph at the end, I would recommend something like more neutral, like an extra virgin olive oil. I don't really taste the olive oil itself when I make them. Like I've made basil infused oil. It's not an herb, but like tangerine infused oil. It's delicious. Dr. Axe. Ooh, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, he does have a good book, Jasmine. I forget what it's called. I think I have the one you're talking about on my shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to know a few herbal recommendations for every like subset of conditions you're going to see in clinical
Yeah.
practice, whether that's metabolic. I typically go with something like berberine, whether that's digestive, you've got things like peppermint oil, whether it's, hormonal. I use a lot of Vitex for that for folks. Um, neuro, there's some things. Yeah, I think it's just important to understand like, okay, I've got two or three herbs I feel comfortable with for each set of conditions. You know the dosages, you know the medications that it interacts with. Um, but yeah, you kind of highlighted all that too tonight. You kind of summarized it, Rachel, which is cool.
Yeah, and to answer Darlene's question, no, I have not used blood type to determine herbs. But going back to what David was saying about having like a handful of herbs that you're comfortable with, um, something that I think is a pretty universal experience at one point or another for clients is, you have a friend who tries an herb and they rave about it, how well it worked for them. You try it and you're not experiencing the same benefits. That doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't work. It might not be the right form. It also might not be the right energetics for your constitution. So, and it might be one of those things where the herb's not right for you at this stage in your life. That could certainly change as your biochemistry changes. Or if you develop different imbalances or disease states.
What other questions does everybody have? This is something that at least I know from the schools I've worked with, herbalism typically is not in core curriculums of programs out there. So I think this is
Yeah.
a great topic to know. Oh, okay. Hannah has a question there, Rachel.
Yes. Yeah. And to your point, real quick, David, I'll bring this up. So when I was in my master's, it's 2 years of schooling. We had 1 week on herbs, and
Yeah.
that was it. And it was like garlic. Um, so Hannah, I just use the same testing that you're probably using in nutrition practice. I really like the Dutch oat. So I don't really use testing for the purpose of herbal medicine, more so testing as I would for any client going through the nutrition care process, doing that assessment. And then I have questionnaires that help inform me of the person's constitution. And then within my scope of practice, I can do what's called a nutrition focused physical exam. So as I'm going through and looking for nutrient imbalances, I'm also observing how a person's constitution is presenting.
It might also help to think about it like this, Hannah, where the testing, the questionnaires, all those things, those are done to determine which pathways are a little off. And then you can figure out which herb to use, right? Because you know the mechanism of action.
Yeah. And yeah, Herb Farm, that's a good one, Jasmine. I don't realize they're on Thrive Market. I have a subscription and I can't figure out how to cancel it. I might
Yeah,
as
I
well.
have Thrive too. Hey, if you're a teacher, you get free Thrive account. So Rachel, you're a teacher.
Yeah.
You're supposed to get, I have a free account for military and being a teacher.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I think I have time for like one more question. So eczema, okay, there's two more. So for eczema, like a salve with calendula is wonderful. And you can also drink calendula tea, so you have the internal and external support. And then in terms of constitution, so it really depends on the medical system. So like we have Western herbalism, we have Ayurveda, where we have the doshas, we have traditional Chinese medicine. Um, so in terms of Western herbalism, the constitution is like the same as the energetics. So we have temperature, moisture, and then tone. So hot, cold, dry, moist, tense, relaxed. So for temperature, like this could look like somebody who's warm or flushed or inflammatory. And if somebody has more of a cold constitution, maybe they have cool extremities, their digestion is sluggish. In terms of moisture, like if somebody's moist, maybe they are experiencing edema or they have like chronic sinus issues versus being chronically dehydrated or showing signs of dryness in the skin, hoarseness in the voice, brittle hair. And then with tone, people who are like wired and tired, so muscle tightness, rigidity, maybe they experience a lot of um, tension in their head, neck, and shoulders, racing thoughts at night versus being in more of a relaxed state where if we're too relaxed, then we're experiencing fatigue. And it's like we need stimulating herbs to help us out there.
Yeah, what we'll do too, guys, is I'll create an area in our private community group and I'll get Rachel in there to answer questions so we can continue this conversation. And you guys can just, I'll make a discussion board and I'll have Rachel just kind of be the moderator of that space. And we can just continue the herbal discussion, questions, answers, those kinds of things. Um, yeah, good questions. Yeah, Rachel, do you need to go and we'll kind of post these questions to the board and I'll invite you there?
Yeah, we can do that. I saw one real quick,
Yeah, go
stimulating
ahead.
herbs for chronic fatigue syndrome. So, something like ginseng, like American ginseng is a little bit more gentle than Asian ginseng. So that would be a great herb for fatigue. But of course, like with any herb, if you're trying something out, first make sure you're looking at the herb drug interactions if you're taking pharmaceuticals, but also start at a lower dose. You can always titrate up and figure out where your sweet spot is. And remember, sometimes herbs can be low and slow. So it might not be an immediate effect unless you're taking it in like a tincture. If you're drinking it more as like a tonic or a tea, it's going to take several weeks for you to start to experience the rebalance of whatever it is that you're dealing with. But thank you so much, everyone, for having me. I really enjoyed getting to spend the evening with you. And yeah, I'm just grateful to be with your group.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Rachel. Have a good night, and I'll blast out the slides and some information tomorrow, the recording for folks that couldn't be here. And yeah, I'll invite Rachel to the group, and she can answer questions over the next few weeks.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks,
Take care.
guys.
Bye.
Cool. I'll stay on for a few more minutes if anybody has any questions from our group. How you doing, Danielle? How was HealCon? Was it awesome?
It was wonderful, especially because it was my first HealCon. I've been to a couple conferences before, but it was my first. Having Lisa there really helped. I didn't think that I would be uncomfortable, and I wasn't, but it was like, wow, I really appreciate having Lisa there.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's good to have a buddy. I agree. I
I
think
watched. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I think Sean and I might both go next year, which will be fun. But what were you gonna say?
Well, I watched the recording, one of the two when I wasn't available. The most recent one, the Grand Rounds, and she mentioned Dr. Murray, but she wasn't able to be there. I wanted to write up, it's on my list of things to do, to write up what Dr. Murray said, the motivating things that he said, as well as I forget the first guy's name, Johnny Bowden. He did the opening and Michael Murray did the closing, and they were not woo-woo inspirational. They were solid inspirational for consultants, what we're actually doing and the things that we want to keep in our mind when we're doing what we're doing. So
That's awesome.
I hope to write something up. It would be easier to write it than me speak about it, but I could aim high.
Yeah, I mean, you could just jot down a few points from it, and you know, if like Lisa was there too and some other folks, maybe they could contribute to your like key takeaways from it. But are there recordings from all the talks at the conference? There are. Oh, I need to ask Nicole
Well,
Hodson for those.
if you didn't go, you have to pay for them. I
Okay.
believe. I'm not positive, but I believe you, so that you get your CEs.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
So, but, and it would be unfair to share since I have access to them.
No, yeah, yeah, you can't do that. Yeah,
But
that's
still,
cool.
I wanted to write it out. Like, Bowden had 10 points, and Dr. Murray had 10 points. And so I want to just write that out and re-listen to them a little bit and add some things that they themselves added because it was very, very important.
That's awesome. Did you make any connections there?
Well, there were a lot of people who knew me. I heard Lisa say that I was prepared and knew a lot of people. It was people knew me. I knew Yvonne. I wanted to meet Yvonne. She was very busy.
Yeah.
But I finally met Monica Hillfield. What's her?
Hill filler, filer,
Highfield. Monica
Highfill.
Highfield.
Yeah.
I met my teacher from Bowman. I met some of the other people from Bowman that knew me. So, yeah, I touched base with Designs for Health, touched base with a lot of the people on the floor. So,
That's awesome. Good, good. Yeah, that's right. Designs for Health there. That's awesome. That's what it's all about. Just having conversations, you know, and
the
you know,
last day, Rachel and I ended up having breakfast together.
oh yeah, that's awesome.
And
Cool.
I went to that soil talk that you were mentioning. He helps farmers make their soil right again.
Oh, who was the guy for that?
Um,
Please tell me it was let me look him up.
he looks grumpy, but I understand why, because he's talking about a very bothersome subject. Why
Is it
can't
Gabe Brown?
no?
Okay, never mind.
I can't figure out why I can't find it. All right, I'm approaching it now. Tim Whiteman.
Tim Whiteman, let me look him up.
his website isn't a lot, but he is the farmer on the ground. But he has like 40 years of farming experience because he was brought up as a farmer.
Oh yeah. Here he is on the Hyokan website. Oh wow, look at that. Yeah, he looks like a farmer. That's cool.
But he looks grumpy, and it's because he was humorous. He threw jokes into it, but it was the dry humor based on the reality of our situation with our soils and our the farming and the
Yeah.
government in the farming.
Yeah, it is a depressing topic. His picture on the Hyokan website, yeah, he looks like grumpy and sad.
Yeah, but he was a good talk. I mean, I didn't catch a lot because it was my first time and I got distracted, but I'm gonna go back and listen to a lot more.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. How's everybody else doing before we kind of part ways tonight? Everybody doing all right? We had someone else pass the exam. She's not here tonight, but she just passed the exam the other day. That was cool. I chatted with connected with the head attorney for government ethics at Medicare and Medicaid. He's like RFK Jr.'s like right-hand man. And so that was interesting connection for me this past week. He lives in my town. Connected with him at church, and then we ended up going and grabbing a beer together. And yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll work for RFK Jr. in like a few months. Who knows? Doing something with making America healthy again. No, he's not the FDA commissioner. He's just an attorney that does things for Medicare, Medicaid right now. Yeah, it was interesting. You just never know, right, Hannah? You just never know. I mean, my wife knows his wife, and then, we finally started chatting, and he's like, "You're a what? You do what?" And I was like, "And you do what?" We exchanged numbers, and we were like, "Let's get together in a few days." So
That's really
yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and he kind of told me some things coming down the pipe. They're going to clean house. They're going to be looking for all these new doctors they can trust. He asked me if I'm interested. RFK is like, we need to go find people. Because they're trying to take on big pharma, they're trying to take on big food,
Mhm.
so they got to like find folks they have the right, view on health holistically and all that. So, yeah, yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, when I first was starting my job search, I was like, wait, how can I want to go work for RFK. How do I do that? That's where I
Yeah.
want to go. I was like, I want to get in there. I want to get into like health policy and more like the backside of health. Like obviously it's helpful on the front lines, like top, one-on-one, but I'm like, I really would love to find a way to get into, yeah, more of that side
I
eventually.
mean, there's a way, Hannah. You just have to keep having conversations. They're all around us. Yeah, I mean, just start. So policy. Okay, so a lot of the policy stuff is like at the public health level.
Hmm.
Um, so you could start by identifying like, okay, agencies in your area at the state level. You could identify federal agencies to target for jobs. You could start with even local like health agencies as well. Yeah, I mean, there's a way, build up the resume. I remember when I wanted to be a professor, I started off with like a TA position, an unpaid internship as an instructor, just like doing some workshops, like, okay, I got to get some teaching experience on my resume. 2 years later, okay, adjunct this, adjunct that, adjunct this, adjunct that, this, and then department chair, and it just happens. You just gotta like figure out what you want and then like figure out the first step.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll keep you posted since you're interested in it all. You never know.
I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, he told me they do have one, government workers aren't going to be in person forever. They're going to go back to remote soon. But they do have these advisory boards. They're like part-time stints, and they form these boards of people for like a certain amount of time. Maybe it's 6 months. I forget the name for them. And you help with a certain initiative. And at the end of your stint, let's say it's like a 6 month stint on a nutrition, health regulatory advisory board, it could lead to a potential like full-time job. So I told them I'm interested in that as well. Um,
Very
just as
cool.
like a part-time thing. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting stuff. So good. Yeah, next week I'm gonna have this awesome conventional blood work chart to just hand to you guys. I'm working on updating my old one, and it's gonna give you all of the conventional blood work labs and readings, and then on the right, it's gonna tell you what they mean nutritionally. Um, so we'll do a presentation on conventional blood work. We'll do Kara's case study, and then I'll give everybody this handout to just keep at the ready when someone comes in with blood work numbers. Cool. Anybody else? Linda, how you doing? Good work on the resume. It looks pretty
Oh,
sharp. I just messaged you back.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know I had like a couple other things. I was like, once I do that, do you think it's ready?
Yeah, I think it's ready. It looks really good.
It does. Thank you. And there are like
Yeah.
a couple other companies that I'm looking into as well that I'm interested in. But I think just like you've been saying, like I am honestly looking for that hybrid model so that I can sort of morph everything into like a business that I get to do eventually, like in
Yeah.
the near future, that's just my own. So that's kind of like the ultimate goal. And then to at least maybe teach part-time. Teach this part-time. That would be great too.
Yeah,
So yeah.
you'd be a
Mhm.
good teacher, Linda.
No, thank you.
You know, I would, yeah, figure out like a few things because teaching is something you could do. You could get your foot in with teaching without giving up what you're doing right now, and it would allow you like, okay, let me do one course as an adjunct. I could
Mm,
keep looking for other positions, get some teaching experience under your belt. Maybe you're teaching marketing for a year, but maybe after
no.
that you could find a nutrition one. I did
Mm.
post an interesting job today. One of my favorite companies to follow, Parsley Health, posted
Oh
it in
yeah, I like
Circle.
that.
Remote
Mm-hmm.
functional health coach, kind of cool.
Yeah,
Let me know if anybody applies. I think they
that's
want
good.
they want 3+ years of coaching experience, or you've coached at least 50 people. I mean, I don't know how they're going to verify that. You could probably say you've done that in this program just through all the
Mhm.
grand rounds, mock consultations.
Yeah,
You've got me as a referral, but
yeah.
I don't
That's
know.
true. Yeah, no, that's great. That's a really good one as well. Like right in that space of like teaching
Yeah.
and doing. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome.
Cool. Yeah. And then Linda, don't just target the companies that are hiring. I looked at the list. Most of them, I think, were just actual job postings. Find companies that you're like, I want to work for this company. I don't care what I do for the first year. I want in with this company.
Mm,
Make a list of
okay.
those as well.
Okay. Okay. I will do that. That's
Cool.
yeah, like dream companies. Okay. I
Yep.
can do that. Hmm. That sounds great. I was going to ask you, are you are you and Sean going next year to HillCon?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going with Purdue, and then the NAMP is actually trying to get Sean to speak there. A lot of folks need business help and career help. Um, and that's just what everyone is asking the NAMP for. They're like, hey, all the talks are great, but could you please get someone to talk about like how to like kickstart our career and this and
Oh,
that? And like everybody's been asking them that. So I think Sean might end up being a speaker. Are you gonna go?
I'm thinking about going for next year.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
let's all get together. That's cool. I think it's in Hannah's area too. Hannah, you better go.
Yes, yeah, I went to the last one in Bellevue,
Cool.
not last year, the year before. So yeah, I definitely will try and go.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
fun to meet up and to hang out during that. Yeah, we'll keep you posted on that, Linda.
Okay, that sounds great. That'll be great. Then we all could meet up.
Yeah, I think I have to go. Purdue's sending me, so I'll be there.
Okay. That's
Cool. I'll
great.
probably have a Purdue table and then hop over to the holistic consulting table.
Yeah, right. And then we do the meetup, right? Our own
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. Good. All right, guys. Yeah, let me log
David,
off here and
You
unless
could ask all of us to man the holistic consulting table and
oh yeah, good idea. Good
Mhm.
idea.
That's so cool. That's true. That's true.
That's right. We're building an army. Yeah, we got to recruit more folks. All right. Yeah, so I'll be on. Doesn't look like I have too many unread emails. I always check in case somebody's waiting on something. I'll be on all day tomorrow if somebody needs something. just pop me an email. I'll have both computers open, Purdue and my personal. So cool guys, good talk tonight, and we'll see you next week for blood work.
Thank you.
All right, guys.